One of the way we discipline students is actually teaching them the wrong lesson. Today, I want to briefly explore how Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory provides both a historical and philosophical foundation for shifting from exclusionary discipline to restorative practices in schools. Bandura challenges traditional punish-based models and instead suggests that behavior is socially, which has major implications for how we respond to student misconduct. Before we can talk about discipline reform, we have to understand the philosophical shift that Albert Bandura introduced. When Bandura was developing his theory, behaviorism was dominant. The assumption was simple: reward behavior you want and punish behavior you don't. Students were viewed as reactive, almost mechanical in a sense. But Bandura's research showed something much deeper. He demonstrated that people learn by observing others. They watch how authority figures respond, they interpret those responses, and then they internalize what they see. That's where reciprocal determinism becomes important. Behavior, personal beliefs, and environment are constantly interacting. It's not just that the environment shapes the student, but also that the student influences the environment. Philosophically, that's a big deal. Bandura rejected strict determinism. He believed individuals have agency or the capacity to reflect, choose, and change. And central to that is self-efficacy, or the belief a student has that I'm capable of doing better. Students who believe they can regulate their behavior are far more likely to do so. So when we think about discipline, we're not just asking how to stop behavior, we're asking how behavior is learned and reinforced in the first place. And that's where discipline policy becomes more than just policy, it becomes philosophy in action. Traditional zero tolerance discipline is rooted in behaviorist thinking. The assumption is that punishment will deter behavior. If you suspend a student, they will not repeat the behavior. But from a social cognitive perspective, suspension actually interrupts the learning process. If behavior is learned socially, removing a student removes them from an environment where positive modeling and guided correction happens. It also communicates something very powerful. That's, you don't belong here. Research shows that exclusionary discipline often fails to reduce recidivism and can contribute to disengagement. Now, compare that to restorative discipline. Restorative discipline practices require students to reflect on their behavior, understand impact, and then repair the harm. They stay in the learning community, then they practice accountability, and they develop self-regulation. From Bandura's perspective, this makes far more sense. It preserves modeling, it strengthens self-efficacy, and it reinforces agency. Then discipline becomes a learning experience rather than an exclusionary or removal experience. And here's what I think is most important. Students are constantly observing how adults handle justice. Discipline doesn't just correct behavior, it teaches what justice looks like. From my perspective and what I've learned through my research, discipline should be developmental, not just reactive. I believe students are capable of growth, but that growth requires structured accountability, not abandonment. Bandura's theory reinforces something I strongly believe. Students are not passive problems to be managed, but they are active agents capable of reflection and change. That does not mean eliminating consequences overall, but it means aligning consequence with what students are learning. From a Christian worldview, this resonates deeply. Scripture calls for justice, mercy, and accountability are opposites, but instead they work together. Exclusion may control behavior temporarily, but restoration has the potential to transform it. If behavior is learned socially, then schools must model the kind of justice, accountability, and reconciliation we want students to internalize. Ultimately, Bandura reminds us that education is not just about academic knowledge, but it's about shaping moral agents. And discipline is one of the powerful tools we have to do that.